Okay, so the date is Sunday, February 1st, 2026. And I want you to just think about that for a second. We're here. We are in the future.
We made it.
We made it. But today, we're not talking about, flying cars or anything. We're looking at a puzzle that, well, honestly, it feels like it shouldn't fit together at all.
It's a strange one.
We have this stack of research here, and it straddles two completely different worlds. On one hand, you have this really high-level, cutting-edge psychology on narcissism and how it's mutating in the age of AI.
Right.
And then on the other hand, we have the gritty economic reality of Balkan politics in North Macedonia.
It does sound like a jarring mix when you just put it out there like that. I mean, usually we're doing deep dives into tech or maybe just history.
Right. But today, the person we're looking at is the bridge.
Yes, he is.
We're looking at Dr. Sam Vaknin. And if you've been on the internet in the last, 25 years, you have probably seen him.
Oh, for sure. He's hard to miss.
He's the guy with that intense stare who tells you exactly how he's going to manipulate you. I mean, he is such a polarizing figure, a self-proclaimed recovered narcissist, a philosopher. And this is the part that always gets me, a former economic advisor to a prime minister.
And that duality, that's exactly why this deep dive is so fascinating. We're not just looking at a biography.
No.
We're looking at systems. So Vaknin, he gives us this lens to look at individual pathology, what breaks inside our heads.
Okay.
And then through his physical location and his work, we get to see national pathology. We see what happens when a country system starts to fail its own people so profoundly that the people just leave.
I have to stop you there for a second, though, because linking a personality disorder to a national economy, that feels like a bit of a stretch. Are we saying the country is a narcissist?
Yeah.
Or is that just, a convenient metaphor?
It feels like a stretch until you look at the mechanism. I mean, the way a narcissist extracts fuel or supply from a victim is hauntingly similar to how a corrupt state extracts resources from its citizens. It's all about the gap between the image that's presented and the reality that's being endured.
Okay, I'm intrigued. So here's our mission for today. We need to unpack Vaknin's latest theories for 2026, specifically this idea of the healed manipulator, which sounds like a horror movie title.
It really does.
And then we're going to pivot hard to understand this thing called the White Plague, which is the brain drain crisis currently tearing apart North Macedonia, the place Vaknin calls home.
From the micro to the macro, it's a study in dysfunction.
So let's start with the man himself. Where is Sam Vaknin right now? Because looking at these sources, for a guy who's been around since the 90s, he is not slowing down.
Not at all. He is very much active on the global circuit. I'm just looking at the schedule for this year, for 2026. And he's a keynote speaker at the Neuropsychiatry Conference in Dubai, and then he's off to the Psychology Conference in Osaka.
And his digital footprint is just massive. His YouTube channel, I think it's Professor Sam Vaknin, it's surpassed 450,000 subscribers, over 100 million views as of early this year. That is not niche academic stuff. That's mainstream influence.
It is. And what's so interesting is what he's talking about now. He's not just rehashing the basics of NPD from, the 90s. He's arguing that the narcissist is evolving. He's identified a new phenotype for 2026 that's specific to our culture right now. He calls it the healed manipulator.
Okay, this part. This is where I actually had to put the notes down and just stare at the wall for a minute.
I get that.
Because we all know the stereotype of the narcissist, right? The sort of Donald Trump archetype, the loud, arrogant, chest-thumping guy who needs all the attention.
Of course.
But Vaknin says that's old school. That's vintage narcissism. So what is this healed manipulator?
Well, think about the huge cultural shift we've seen. I mean, therapy has basically become the dominant religion of social media.
Everyone speaks the language.
Everyone. Yeah. We all talk about holding space, boundaries, gaslighting, attachment styles.
Right. If you don't know your attachment style in 2026, do you even have an Instagram account?
Exactly. And because that is now the language of trust, the predator has adapted. Vaknin is warning that a new breed of narcissist has emerged who weaponizes this language. They use therapy speak, emotional intelligence, not to connect with you.
But as camouflage.
It's camouflage.
There's an evolutionary adaptation. In the 90s, arrogance might have signaled power, but in 2026, vulnerability signals safety. So they mimic vulnerability.
Precisely. They mimic the prey to catch the prey. Imagine someone hurts you, and when you try to confront them, instead of yelling or denying it, they just calmly look at you and say, I feel you're projecting your past trauma onto me, and I need to set a boundary for my own mental peace.
Oh, wow. That's diabolical. Because how do you argue with that? If you keep pushing, you end up looking like the aggressor.
That's the whole point. It's a shield. It sounds healthy, but the intent is pure control. It's using the language of healing to silence the victim.
Gosh.
Vaknin argues that in 2026, the most dangerous manipulators are the ones who convince you they're the most self-aware person in the room.
It's a wolf in sheep's clothing. But the sheep is wearing a mental health advocate t-shirt.
And this connects to another concept he's pushing, cold prosociality.
Okay, explain that one. Because prosocial sounds like a good thing. It means helping people.
It does. But cold prosociality is when narcissists act charitable, they do good deeds, they're publicly very virtuous, but there is zero empathy behind it. They're not helping the old lady cross the street because they care about the old lady.
They're helping her because there's a camera rolling.
Or just because there's an audience. They want the applause. They want that narcissistic supply, that validation. It's performance art. And in a world where everything is filmed and posted, cold prosociality is the perfect disguise.
You could be a monster in private and a saint in public.
Totally.
This brings us to the big theoretical framework he's been developing. I saw this acronym in the notes, IPHAM. The intrapsychic activation model.
Yes.
Now, usually when I see acronyms like that, my eyes glaze over. But this seems really central to his 2026 work. What actually is IPM?
So it's essential for understanding his view of the mind. Vaknan argues a narcissist isn't one single solid person. Trauma causes a split. So IPAM is basically a map of these different self-states.
Self-states, like different personalities.
Sort of. Think of it more like a switchboard. Depending on the stress or the environment, the narcissist switches between states. There might be a child state that's, petulant and demanding.
Okay.
Then there's a protector state that's aggressive and cold.
So when you're dealing with them, you literally don't know who is going to pick up the phone.
Exactly. And IPAM attempts to systemize that switching. Vaknin is trying to turn this erratic, crazy-making behavior into a predictable circuit board. You trigger X, you get the child. You trigger Y, you get the protector.
It's his attempt to bring, engineering logic to a disordered mind.
Which makes sense, given his background.
Yeah. But there's one more concept here that I think acts as the perfect bridge to the second half of our show. Prophilicity.
Yes. This is the sociological side of things.
Prophilicity. It sounds like profile plus publicity.
That's pretty much the gist. He's drawing on social systems theory here. He argues we've crossed this threshold where our online profiles have just replaced our authentic selves.
So in the past, you were a person who had a reputation.
Right. But now you are a brand that has a person kind of loosely attached to it.
Being seen as has overtaken being.
Correct. And if being seen as is the most important thing, then reality becomes secondary. Truth becomes secondary. And this, Vaknin argues, is why narcissism is rising. We are all being trained to manage our own little PR departments instead of just living our lives.
And that idea that the image is more important than the reality, that's the perfect segue. Because that theory makes so much more sense when you realize where Vaknin is writing all this from. He's not sitting in a tenure-track office at Harvard or Oxford. He's in Skopje, North Macedonia.
Right. And in North Macedonia, the gap between image and reality is practically a canyon.
Okay, let's pivot then. We've looked at the pathology of the mind. Now let's look at the pathology of the place. Vaknin has been there since 1996. He's embedded.
He is. He served as an advisor to the former Prime Minister, Nikola Gruevski. He co-authored Macedonian Economy on a Crossroads. And he's currently a visiting professor at Southeast European University there. So he sees the granular detail of how this country functions or fails to function.
And the country is currently facing something they call the White Plague.
Yeah.
Which sounds medieval and terrifying. What does that term mean in a 2026 context?
It's a term used across the Balkans, but especially in Macedonia, to describe massive depopulation and brain drain. It's a plague of emptiness.
Emptiness.
The sources tell us that North Macedonia has lost approximately 10% of its population in the last 30 years.
10%. That's a staggering number. That's not just a statistic. That's empty houses on every street. That's schools closing down because there aren't enough kids.
And it's accelerating. The stats for 2026 are even more alarming. Over 60% of citizens aged 18 to 30 say they want to emigrate.
Over 60%.
That is more than half of the future generation actively planning their exit.
Why? I mean, every country has issues. Inflation is bad everywhere. Housing is expensive. Why is the urge to flee so specific and so intense there?
The sources break it down into three main factors, and the first one hits right on that theme of image versus reality. It's the culture of nepotism, or what they call partizasija.
Partizasija.
Partisanship.
It's deeper than just politics. It's the partizasija effect. It's the reality on the ground that a party membership card, a partiska knižka, is more valuable than a university degree.
Okay, let's make that visceral for a second. What does that actually look like for someone?
Well, think about what that does to a 22-year-old's brain. Imagine you're a student in Skobody. You spend 4 years studying engineering. You pull all-nighters. You sacrifice your social life. You get the degree with honors.
You do everything right.
Everything right. And then you apply for a job at a state utility or a ministry, and you lose that job to a guy who barely finished high school. But he spent the last election pasting posters for the ruling party on lampposts. That just destroys the soul. It's not just unfair, it makes your effort completely meaningless.
Exactly. It kills meritocracy. Surveys from late 2025 showed that 80% of youth feel social exclusion. They feel the authorities just don't care.
So why play?
Why play? If the game is rigged to that extent, you don't just get angry, you check out.
It's a dignity deficit.
Yeah.
And then you add the raw economics on top of that emotional crushing. We have this term in the notes, wage-price mismatch.
This is the practical side. The data shows that inflation has globalized prices, but the wages have stayed local. The common saying in Skopje right now is that people are earning a Macedonian wage, but paying European prices for groceries and energy.
That math doesn't work.
It doesn't. And right next door, you have what they call the gastarbeiter magnet.
The guest worker magnet.
Germany, Croatia, other EU nations. They're desperate for workers because their own populations are aging, so they've eased visa requirements. If you're a nurse or an engineer, you can earn 4 to 5 times more in Germany than you can in Ohrid or Bitola.
4 to 5 times. That's life-changing money. That's I can build a house for my parents' money.
It is, but here's the crucial nuance. We usually think people migrate for money. But the research on the White Plague suggests they aren't just running towards the euro, they're running away from the dysfunction.
So it's a push, not just a pull.
It's a push. They are seeking a functional state. They want to live in a place where if you call an ambulance, it actually arrives. Where if you pay your taxes, you see a road being built.
They want a reality that matches the promise.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the third factor, the waiting room exhaustion. This is about the EU, isn't it?
Yes. For 30 years, the whole narrative in Macedonia was we're working towards EU membership. That was the carrot on the stick. Suffer now, reform now, and eventually we'll join the club.
But the club keeps locking the door.
Precisely. After the name remember, they changed the country's name to North Macedonia just to satisfy Greece. And then the French proposal, the Bulgarian vetoes. The feeling in 2026 is that the waiting room is a dead end.
The goalposts just keep moving.
So the sentiment has completely shifted. It used to be, we'll bring Europe here. Now it's, we are going to Europe.
Yeah.
If the EU won't come to Macedonia, the Macedonians are just going to the EU.
It's a vote with their feet, a total rejection of the system.
And this creates this vicious cycle. The country loses hundreds of millions of euros every year in exported education. The Macedonian state pays to educate a doctor, and then the German healthcare system gets the benefit of that doctor for the next 40 years.
It's a massive transfer of wealth from a poor country to a rich one in the form of human talent.
Exactly.
So let's try to synthesize all this. Because we started with Dr. Vaknin and his psychology of the healed manipulator, and now we're looking at a crumbling state. But I'm starting to see the connection you mentioned at the beginning.
The connection is the false self.
Go on.
Vaknin teaches that a narcissist creates a false self to hide their shame and their inadequacy. They demand you worship this false self, even though the reality is hollow. Well, look at the state. The state demands loyalty votes, taxes, patriotism based on a false self, this idea that it's a functional meritocratic democracy on the verge of EU membership.
But the reality is the nepotism, the corruption, the poverty.
Right. And just like being in a relationship with a narcissist, the citizens are being gaslighted. They're told growth is 3.2%. We are succeeding, while they can't afford bread.
So leaving,
Yeah.
emigrating. That's essentially the ultimate act of setting a boundary.
It's the no contact rule. Vaknin always says the only way to win with a narcissist is not to play the game. The youth of Macedonia are realizing the only way to succeed is to exit the game entirely.
That's profound and, frankly, a bit depressing. But Vaknin himself, he's not just an observer here, he's a player.
Yeah.
Is he universally loved there? I mean, he's putting Macedonia on the map with some of these conferences.
No, and we have to be clear on this. He's a very polarized figure to some, especially to victims of abuse. He's a brilliant pioneer. His book, Malignant Self-Love, gave them a vocabulary. It gave them the words to understand what was happening to them. He named the monster.
And to others.
To others, he's a self-taught provocateur. He lacks formal clinical licensure in certain jurisdictions, even though he is a professor. And his advice can be controversial. He challenges the mainstream therapeutic community. So even he is a source of conflict.
But in a way, he fits right in, a complex figure in a complex place.
It does.
It really is a deep dive into two different kinds of survival, isn't it? Vaknin is teaching people how to survive the healed manipulator in their personal lives, how to spot the fake empathy, the weaponized therapy speak. And meanwhile, the citizens of Macedonia are just trying to survive a system that seems designed to push them out.
And I think that's the warning for everyone listening, not just those interested in the Balkans.
How so?
Because Macedonia is the canary in the coal mine. We are seeing this proofilicity, this prioritizing of image over function everywhere. We see it in Western politics. We see it in corporate culture. When a system cares more about how it looks than how it works, it starts to die. Macedonia is just experiencing the most extreme version of it.
That really is the takeaway. Whether it's a person using therapy words to manipulate you, or a government using EU rhetoric to pacify you. If the actions don't match the words, you are in a danger zone. Check the reality, not the profile. Critical thinking is really the only defense we have left.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a thought on this concept of profilicity that Vaknin talks about. If he's right, and being seen as has replaced being, are we all becoming slightly narcissistic in 2026? Are we all just curating our little false selves?
That's the uncomfortable question, isn't it? You post a photo of your dinner. Did you enjoy the dinner, or did you enjoy the like you got for the dinner?
Oof, I don't like the answer to that question. And regarding the White Plague, can a nation survive when its future generation decides the only way to succeed is to leave? If the best and brightest all go, who is left to fix the problems?
That is the crisis of the decade. And if they don't solve it, the waiting room just becomes an empty room. A huge thank you to the listeners for joining us on this deep dive. It was a heavy one, but I think a really important one.
Absolutely.
And hey, next time someone uses perfect therapy speak to explain why they treated you poorly, maybe check that against reality.
Check your sources always.
See you next time.